So, you want to learn how to make chicken katsu. Well, katsu actually isn't of Japanese origin. In fact, it comes from a European dish called schnitzel. But anyway, we're going to go over how to make katsu. Katsu actually is short for the word katsuretsu, which stands for, literally translated into Japanese, stands for cutlet. Now, you've probably heard of katsu in many forms, such as tonkatsu, which stands for pork cutlet. But today we're not going to make tonkatsu or pork cutlet. We're going to make chicken katsu. And the reason why I decided to use chicken katsu is because some of the people that's going to be learning this dish today are from Morocco and probably most likely are going to be traditional Muslim where they don't eat pork. So we're going to make a recipe that's a little more inclusive. So we're going to use chicken thigh today instead of pork loin cutlet. So yeah, if you've fried literally anything before in your entire life, then you're already halfway there. Chicken katsu is so entirely easy to make. Much like any other fried food, you're going to be using eggs and flour. The only thing that makes chicken katsu a little bit different is the breading itself, which we're going to be using Japanese style panko breadcrumbs. So I'm pretty excited to show you guys how to make katsu. If you already know how to make katsu, then you already know the song and dance. And for those who are learning for the first time, it's going to be a good time and it's going to be very delicious. So let's get started. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is get everything mise en place. You've probably heard me use that term plenty of times before, so let me explain what it actually means. Mise en place is French for everything in its place. And so what that means for us is that we must get everything in its place. The reason why mise en place is important is because we don't want to be doing food prep in the middle of cooking. You don't want that. You want to be able to start throwing things in the pan that's already prepared. You don't want to be still chopping and slicing and all that stuff like that. You don't want to be doing that. When you start cooking, you should be cooking. So getting everything mise en place or in its place allows you to just start throwing things in the pan and not dealing with like bullshit, you know? So the first thing I'm going to do, let's see, I got to choose which knife I want to use today. Okay, so I'm going to use this knife today. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is prep our chicken. I'm going to get my meat cutting board. The reason why you use a separate cutting board for this is because you don't want cross-contamination. Big boy for chopping things like veggies and stuff like that, and small boy for dealing with meats, because we do not want cross-contamination. But we're not going to be dealing with veggies today, so out of force of habit. So some of you might be thinking, oh, chicken thighs. Why not chicken breast? Well, you'll notice that there's a big difference between Western cooking and Asian cooking. And one of the biggest difference is the usage of chicken. Breast is really popular in the West, and thighs are really popular in the East. And in my opinion, I think the Asians got this right. Chicken thigh is so much better than chicken breast, and there's a reason why. And the reason why is flavor. Chicken breast is the least flavor. It fucking sucks. It's so bland and it's so boring, and it's, you know, the chicken breast is so easy to overcook and to dry out, and it's so fucking terrible. I mean, you put it in a stew and you might be okay, because, you know, chicken breast doesn't have its own flavor. It only takes on the flavor of whatever you're cooking it in, whereas thighs, these thicky boys, God, thighs are flavorful. There's a lot of umami in thighs. Even with very little seasoning, thighs have so much flavor to offer. It's a dark meat, so it's juicier, it's more flavorful, and like other dark meats, they're almost impossible to overcook. They don't dry out. They're fatty. They're you see, look at all this fat. We're going to be trimming some of this fat though. They're fatty. They're flavorful. It has a lot of umami. Way better than chicken breast for certain applications. So inside of Asian cooking, you'll notice that they almost always use chicken thigh, except for some very specific recipe. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is trim off some of that fat. Now, fat is flavor, and if you learn in any professional cooking class or whatever like that, that's one of the things that you're going to learn is fat is flavor. I'm not a chef. I've never been to culinary school. I've never been to, you know, I've never trained under no chef or anything like that. Everything I've learned is just self-taught or learned on the internet. Now, we don't want to get rid of all of this fat because, again, fat is flavor, but we want to get rid of some of the more offensive ends and bits and bobs of the chicken. Now, normally what we would do after this is pound out the chicken, but this chicken thigh is already thin as it is. Pounding out meats not only tenderizes the meat, which therefore makes it more easier to chew, and it also makes the when you pound out the meat, also makes it larger and thinner, and so on and so forth. So no, we're not going to pound this out. We're just going to cook it as is. Let's see here. We want to get rid of some of these, like, these little things that stick out at the end and stuff like that. These little, these pieces here, just to make it more uniform. We're going to cut some of this stuff to make it more uniform. Now, what applications can you have for chicken katsu? Also, feel around the meat. Look, make sure that the bones are actually all gone. And if you see any, if we feel any things like cartilage, which is the little white, really hard bits that you might feel. If you feel any cartilage, get rid of that, because you don't want to chew on that when you're eating your delicious, juicy chicken cutlet. All right. So after we've trimmed our meat and gotten rid of all the stuff we've cut out, I'm still cutting shit off, Lord have mercy. After we've cut our meat, now we're going to season our chicken. Now, you don't need to season it too much, because remember, when we're talking about application, right? What do you put a katsu piece with? Typically, katsu, when you say katsu to anybody in Japan, the first thing they're probably going to be thinking of is pork. But chicken is also a common katsu that's made. And so what about the applications? Okay, so for example, one of my most, favorite applications for katsu is curry. Putting a slice of katsu or a piece of katsu or a whole cutlet of katsu inside of accompanying it with curry is super delicious. I mean, curry already has so much flavor, and then you're putting this delicious juicy cut of chicken with it, and so you've got the the katsu you got the katsu sauce and the rice, and it's so delicious. It goes great with this. And then of course you also have other applications such as ramen. I love, whenever I go to a ramen house, I always add a piece of chicken katsu to my ramen. There's a lot of meats. There's some meats already inside of ramen, such as chashu pork, which is a very popular piece of meat that's inside of most ramen that you see, especially when you're talking about ramens in like animes that you've seen. You've seen like the chashu pork pieces and stuff like that. But I always like to add a piece of chicken katsu because it's just so flavorful. Again, the thighs just add so much umami to any kind of dish. We're going to lightly pepper. So you can be a little liberal with the salt, because most of this is going to fry off anyway. Also, if you do not already know, okay, maybe, if you don't already know, you never used iodized salt when cooking in the kitchen. Always use kosher salt, flaky, large kosher salt, pinchable kosher salt. If your salt is coming out of something like this, stop it. Do not use this when cooking. Always use flaky kosher salt or flaky sea salt. Iodized salt, the shit that I told you not to use, is for the guests that are eating. That's table salt. You will quickly oversalt your foods if you are using iodized salt. Do not use iodized salt. Kosher salt is large, it's flaky, easily pinchable, which makes it easy to control how much salt you add. And it's a little bit more difficult to oversalt your dishes. It's a lot more responsible. Do not use iodized salt in your kitchen. Always kosher salt. Okay, so now it's time to prep our breading station. Again, the whole process to get this done is actually super easy. It's I'm telling you, it's not difficult at all. So let me get some of the stuff prepared. So we're going to need a couple of things. We're going to need 2 pans, and I like to use a bowl for the egg. So let's sit that there. Again, we're getting everything mise en place. We're doing a little breading station for our katsu. So in one bowl there's going to be, on one pan there's going to be flour, in another one there's going to be panko. So this is Japanese style panko breadcrumbs. You have to use this to get it proper. You can't use Italian breadcrumbs because they're too small. Panko breadcrumbs, as you can see, are a lot flaky, a lot larger, a lot more flaky and stuff like that. So in order to do it right, you're going to have to use panko. So you're going to get some on the bottom. We'll pour some on the top later. Let's get some flour in here. We don't need a lot of flour because we're not double battering or double dipping. So we just need flour for one coat. For our, just enough flour for both of them. That should be enough. Right, and we're going to be doing one coat for each of them. We're doing 2 pieces of katsu, so I'm going to go with 1 egg because these are not large pieces. So let's do 1 egg, right? And off screen, I'm going to add about a tablespoon of water. Just a dash, just a small dash of water to make an egg wash. Let's see here. Going to do an egg wash, right? Just a small bit of water, and we're going to whisk. Don't need to go too crazy, just get the water and egg incorporated. Now, typically speaking, when you're frying chicken, you would season your flour, salt, pepper, garlic powder, the whole lot, right? But again, Japanese style katsu is not, we're not gonna have like crazy seasoning onto it. And the reason why is because katsu is typically eaten with a sauce. One of the most popular sauces for katsu is obviously tonkatsu sauce, which comes with tonkatsu. Now, some of you have probably already seen my tonkatsu dish that I put on the Cow Talk chat group, and so if you haven't seen it, let me know. I'll put it back up and you can see what a proper tonkatsu looks like. But you know, my tonkatsu was a Korean version called donkatsu. We'll get into that shit later. Anyway, it's time to fry. Okay, let's get this party started. So first we want our oil to be between 165 to 170. So our oil is perfect, right? Now that our oil is hot enough, let's head on back over to the batter station and I'll show you how to properly bread and put it inside the oil. Okay, so first things first, you're going to take your chicken, going to put it inside the flour. We want to get it nice and coated. You want every ounce or inch or centimeter, depending on where you're from. I'm from the UK, so we're going to use centimeters. And you're going to get that all in there. You don't want any dry, any like non-covered spots, right? And you know what? We're going to do this lad as well. I know they're twins, they can share a bathtub. So we want this covered in flour. Every nook and cranny, you want it all, because all of this is going to fry. Okay, right. And we want to maintain our oil at the temperature between 165 and 170 centigrade, because normally you would fry chicken at around 180 degrees centigrade. That's the normal frying temperature for most fried foods. Fried chicken, fried shrimp, chips, the whole 9 yards. But we're using breadcrumb, and breadcrumb burns. Oh boy, does that boy burn quickly. We're going to put it in our egg wash now. And so breadcrumbs burn pretty quickly, and so we're going, that's why we fry it at a little lower temperature than what you normally would fry. Do not, don't be worried. Your chicken is not going to come out raw or anything like that, because it's going to stay in the fry for quite some time. And again, chicken thigh is almost impossible to overcook, so don't worry too much about undercooking the chicken. Just focus on getting the color and the crispiness of what you want for your katsu. And again, we're going to keep the temperature between 165 centigrade and 177 centigrade, because we don't want to burn. We want a good color for our katsu, right? So we don't want to burn it. So let's go on, put our chicken in the breadcrumbs, okay? And we're also going to add some breadcrumbs on top, We're going to add some breadcrumbs on top, right? Look at that, my hands. Use your dry hand. Wet hand, dry hand. Do not put your wet hand inside the breadcrumb station. And so you're going to notice that I'm pressing down there, because not only do I want these breadcrumbs to be pressed in the top, but remember there's breadcrumbs on the bottom. So we want to make sure that the breadcrumbs are being pressed into the meat. We want them to stick as well as possible. Press it up against the sides to make sure that the sides of the thigh are getting properly covered with the breadcrumbs. I'm telling you, this is going to be absolutely delicious. I turned down my temp just a little bit because we were going past 170, and so I'm going to temp check before I put the oil in. Again, we want 165 to 170 centigrade what is that in fucking freedom units? What are the Americans? That's gonna be like 330 to 340 degrees Fahrenheit. You know, the Americans, they used freedom units, Fahrenheit. Oh, well, I like to call them freedom units. But anyway, so let's, again, we're pressing this in there, and we're going to put our first piece in there. We'll do the second piece shortly after, but we're going to shoot putting the first piece in there. So every centimeter of this piece of chicken should be covered. Look at that. That's phenomenal. This is definitely ready to be fried. That's absolutely phenomenal. If you see any pink spots, make sure that's covered up. So let's go and head back to the oil. Okay, so we're back. The temperature's at 170. That's fine enough, but about 169, 170. I turned off the burner because I'm going to put the chicken in, and it's going to be okay because the chicken's going to cool down the oil because it's a different temperature than the oil itself. And then once both pieces are in, I'll put the burner back at around medium. Okay, it's frying time. So let's get this party started. One more temp check just to make sure we are in the right. Yes. All right. We're going to turn the temperature back on to medium, just to medium. And now the frying time. Yes. Always lay your foods away from you because the splash, if you lay it towards you, the splash is going to come back. Always lay it away from you. We're going to keep our temperature at around a medium high, and we're just going to enjoy the fry time. Now, if your pieces are kind of like lapping each other, that's okay. That's why I staggered them. I didn't put them both in at the same time. So that way one can cook a little bit more before the other one, and that way they don't stick together. So jostle them around a bit. Don't get too, finicky about it. We're going to turn the temperature and make sure it's a hardcore medium. And now we're just going to enjoy the show. Now, you're probably wondering, Senpai Sonic, you're probably wondering like, okay, well, how long do we cook it for? Well, I'd say anywhere between 5 to 9 minutes, 7 to 9 minutes on each side. But again, really what you're looking for is to watch the color. Keep your eye on the color. You're looking for a sort of dark golden brown, or not even necessarily dark because it's going to darken up a bit once it comes out of the oil. So just keep an eye on it, and once it gets a color that satisfies you, I'd say about 7 minutes to each side. 9 minutes if your oil is too cold. Okay. Oh, look at that. Look at that color. That is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Just look at that color. Look at that crispiness. Ah, phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Yes, this is Japanese style chicken katsu. So we're going to let it cook a little more on the other side. I'd say about another 5 minutes on the other side. The chicken is definitely cooked through, so now we're just coloring the other side. So I'd say give it about 5 minutes or so. That is looking absolutely gorgeous. That is just looking delicious. Alright, it's done. You want to take your katsus out and you want them put them on a lined baking sheet with this little paper towels on there. And you want to take your katsus on there. And the reason why you want a rack on your baking sheet is because you want those oils to drip. And you want a little space between the paper towels and the chicken so the air can get under that chicken, helping the skin crisp up just a little bit, as this dries off. The air circulates under the chicken, over the chicken, and it dries off. That is some delicious looking katsu. Okay, we did it. It wasn't that difficult, wasn't it? I knew you guys could do it. That's why you are my best students. So here's our chicken katsu. It's still hot. Now, unlike other things where you'd be like, oh, you have to wait for it to cool down, chicken katsu is best served piping hot, throw that bad boy onto your curry dish, throw that bad boy onto your ramen dish. Let's get a sound test. Do you hear that crispiness? Oh, look, I'm gonna squeeze it. Do you hear that? Oh, God, the fucking juices. Look at that, so fucking juicy. Let's cut into this bad boy. Ah, my knife. Every cook has their favorite knives. I usually use two. Okay, let's actually cut into this. Oh yeah. You want to cut it in about, I'd say 2.5 centimeter chunks, or like 3 centimeter chunks tops, right? And then what you would do is you take your knife and then you would place this in the bowl next to your rice. But let's have a look on the inside. First of all, piping hot. Very, very piping hot. Very, very delicious. Look at the juices. You see that? Look at that. It's fucking dripping. Oh my God. Oh, so juicy. Look at that. This is why thigh is far better than breast, in my opinion. Thigh is the god tier cut of meat. We're gonna give it a squeeze. Oh, look at those juices. And it burns. Oh, those fucking juices. Let's give it a bite. I want you guys to hear this. Oh, oh, so good. Holy fuck, that's so delicious. Another one. Woo! Oh, oh, crispy. Oh, holy fuck. Ah. God damn. We put our foot in this, boys and girls. We put our fucking foot in this. It's crispy, it's juicy, it's delicious. Even without any sauce, even without ramen, even without tonkatsu sauce, just on its own. It's flavorful, it's juicy, it has a lot of umami in it. You can eat this plain, you can put an egg on top of this, you can do anything. This is so fucking delicious, and I'm so glad that I got to teach you guys this. Oh, I need to have another bite. Oh. Woo! When I get married, my wife is going to be eating fucking good chicken katsu. It's not that hard. It's not that difficult. And when you guys make your chicken katsu, put it in the group chat. Let me see your work. Well, that's another banger from Sonic. Cheers, gang.